Welcome to End of Life University. Did you know that the human brain has a primal mechanism to keep us from thinking about and acknowledging our own death? It's true, and that's why each one of us has to have a death awareness practice that we actually devote time to. I'm going to be talking all about it in this episode today, which is a solo episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get notifications whenever I post a new episode here on this channel, and also go to eoluniversity.com/support to find out how you can support this channel and the End of Life University podcast to keep us on the air. So here we go with my solo episode. I think this is a really important topic because those of us who are doing work in any area around the end of life, whether we're encouraging people to complete advanced directives, we're working in hospice or palliative care, we might be a death doula or working on home funerals or green burials. Whatever role we're taking in this end of life arena, we are asking people to become more aware of their own mortality, aware of death and dying in their lives. And it's really important when we're stepping out and inviting people to join this movement and to open their own eyes, to look at their own death, plan ahead for it, and make decisions, think and talk about death and their own death specifically. I think it's really important that we live our lives in such a way that demonstrates that we ourselves are practicing what we're preaching, what we're talking to them about, that we ourselves are aware of our own mortality, and that awareness has changed the way we live from day to day. I have long believed that one of the best ways of inspiring and teaching other people something we would like them to know is through the way we live that message in our own lives. And I think it's really important for us in this death positive movement to really look at how we live day to day. Do we practice what we preach? Do we live our lives with constant death awareness and death positivity and death acceptance? And do we live it in such a way that it shines through us, that when other people talk to us or hear from us, they can see that we live what we talk about? We're not just spouting off ideas and theories and thoughts. We actually live day to day what we talk about. So I wanted to really dive into that a little bit and explore what it means to live a death-aware life. How does it show up? How do we look different in the way we approach our day-to-day lives now that we are open to death and now that we do embrace the idea of our own mortality? What does it look like in our lives? And are there ways we could grow and expand in order to make our own death awareness more visible to other people? So that's what inspired me to want to talk about this. And interestingly, just yesterday, the day before I'm recording this, The Guardian online featured an article, a study in their psychology section. And this study is titled Doubting Death, How Our Brains Shield Us from Mortal Truth. It was a fascinating study that demonstrated that the human brain has a primal mechanism for denying death. This is thought to be a protective mechanism because our primitive brains are all about survival and helping us stay alive. And so built into the way our brains function normally is this capacity to ignore and deny death, which is very fascinating because it isn't just a conscious choice to avoid death. It's actually on the subconscious level. It's actually written into the primal brain and the way we function day to day. The brain has defenses against recognizing death as something that will affect us personally. Death is primarily seen as something that happens to other people. So in our natural state when we think about death or talk about death, it's related to something that happens to someone else. And it is not perceived as a personal experience that will happen to each of us. But as we know, we have to look at it personally if we are expecting to write down our advance directives and make plans for the end of life and choices for ourselves for the end of life. The authors of this article speculated that this brain's defense mechanism has led to increased death phobia in our society because we are now removed in our day-to-day lives from the experience of the death of loved ones. And so this defense mechanism in our brains just operates without any experiences to balance it out. And the death denial mechanism takes full stage, more or less, in terms of our experience with death. So my conclusion from that is that we really have to intentionally work on becoming aware of death personally, our own deaths. And I myself have seen in many conversations I've had with hospice workers and other people in this area, I have seen this death denial, personal death denial in real life. I was amazed at the number of hospice workers who themselves have not completed an advance directive, who admit that they've never had a conversation with their own loved ones about their own wishes for the end of life. And so even though we work in this arena, it might seem to us like, oh, I think about death all the time. That's what my work is. I talk about death every day. We do need to take a look at ourselves. And is our approach to death really focused on other people? Are we working and thinking all the time about how death affects other people and how we can help them with their thoughts about death? And how much time do we actually spend contemplating death for ourselves, our own mortality, and actually thinking about and working on our own perception of death and what it will be like when it's our turn, when death comes for us? That's why I felt like this is an important topic for us to think about and to discuss today. So for myself in my own life, I feel like death has been a companion for me for a long time, really since the age of 16, which I've mentioned before is when I had a classmate die and for the first time became aware of the fact that young people die and that even I could die at a young age. And for the first time, death became a reality, a day-to-day, in-the-moment reality of something that's possible for me, that could happen to me. So I was fairly young when I confronted that death denial mechanism in my own brain, and I actually had an experience that overrode that mechanism, that helped me become aware with my higher consciousness. Wait a minute, death is going to happen for me someday, just like it happened for my friend. And I want to be prepared for that. I want to think about it. I want to know when death does come that I lived my best life. So I can say for myself, I've had a certain amount of death awareness since a young age. And I have been influenced by a lot of writers and poets and thinkers. And I've mentioned this in other podcasts before. One thing that stood out for me was in the movie Billy Jack, hearing him say, I believe that's where I heard it, that he carries death on his shoulder. Our death is his companion. And that really rang true for me. And I realized that I want to always have death close to me, on my shoulder. I want death with me, and I want to feel and sense and know that death is there with me at all times, because death is my teacher, and death is my informant about life, and death is my decision maker in many ways about life. So for me, part of my practice became developing this sense of death as a presence that is with me and surrounding me at all times, and not a presence that I fear, a presence that I actually rely upon, that gives me information, that helps me recognize what really matters in life and what's less important in life. So when I talk about this death awareness, I'm really talking about that level of awareness, that level of sensing and knowing and recognizing the presence of death at all times as we are living, and not just so that we'll remember to complete our advanced directives and remember to plan our funeral or to plan a green burial, not just for those reasons, not just because contemplating death now will make it easier when death actually comes for us, easier on us and easier on our loved ones, but because being death aware actually changes how we live our lives and can actually enrich and deepen and expand our consciousness and the way we live from day to day when we do embrace death awareness as part of life. That's why I talk about it. That's why I want to share about it, because I believe that death awareness can enhance life. It can make the experience of life so much more profound, so much more beautiful, so much more joyful, even as it also makes it deeper, richer, and more painful in many ways. But all of those experiences, all of those emotions come together when we're contemplating death. And it creates a beautiful tapestry for us as we live day to day and string together these moments of our existence. So I'm a huge believer in death awareness, carrying death with us at all times, and not just the death of other people, not just death in general, but carrying an awareness of our own mortality. This is me. This is what will happen to me. This is what's happening in my life right now, in this moment. And one thing that occurred to me as I was thinking about this topic for today, and thinking about experiences that I had and the things that had inspired me. And I remembered, this might seem kind of silly and trivial, but I don't know how many of you are familiar with the movie The Princess Bride, which was just long a favorite of my children when they were little. We've watched it over and over again. So I have parts of that movie just memorized because I saw it so many times with my children. But there's this really interesting passage. So I don't know how to shorten this for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, but there's a character, Wesley, who is the love object of the Princess Bride, who has been captured by a pirate in the past, the Dread Pirate Roberts. And Wesley was a prisoner of the Dread Pirate Roberts for a number of years on his ship. And Wesley comes back to his Princess Bride and Princess Buttercup. But Wesley describes to her, as he was living on the ship with the Dread Pirate Roberts, basically as a slave working for the Dread Pirate Roberts, the Dread Pirate would say to him every night, "Good night, Wesley, good work, sleep well. I shall likely kill you in the morning." And so Wesley describes that this is just how he ended every single day, with these words from the Dread Pirate Roberts. Eventually, well, I won't go on with the story, but of course, the Dread Pirate Roberts does not kill Wesley. Of course, he survives and he comes back to Buttercup. But those words always stood out in my mind. And what would that be like if someone every night before you went to bed said to you, "I shall likely kill you in the morning"? Now that I'm older and wiser, and I've done a lot more work on death awareness and death acceptance, I actually see the value in those words, and perhaps the value that came to Wesley as he was growing and evolving and maturing, in having this knowledge at the end of every day that this could be my last day. This could be the last day that I'm alive. I might die in the morning. The Dread Pirate Roberts just told me that I might die in the morning. As much as at one point that sounded terrible to me, like, oh, what a terrible threat that Wesley had to live with every day. But I now view it as, oh, what an interesting gift to actually remind Wesley every single day each day could be your last day, and you never know which one it will be. What a gift that is when you learn to live with that awareness and to not be afraid of it, to accept it as this is a fact. This is just part of reality. We don't know which day will be our last day. We shall likely die in the morning. We don't know for sure when it's going to happen, but it could be tomorrow morning. And so let's make the most of every moment that we have. And that knowledge, it's that awareness I was explaining to you, I received at the age of 16 when my classmate died. And it has been a growing and dawning awareness for me over all of these years. But it has helped me so much to remember to appreciate each and every day and to live life in the moment. And I guess to make choices for myself every day that matter in the moment. So I'll tell you about just an experience I just had yesterday with my son and my new daughter-in-law and my husband. The four of us had lunch together and afterwards decided to go to a donut shop, which I'll tell you, free advertising, Sidecar Donuts is the name of the place, and it's amazing. The best donuts I've ever eaten in my life. So we bought four different donuts, four different types of donuts, and shared them together. So we each got to taste all four. One of them was a pumpkin spice donut that was probably one of the best things I've ever eaten. It was amazing. And so now I don't handle sugar very well, so I'm really for the most part in my day-to-day life, I avoid sugar as much as possible. But yesterday, because of the moment, it was this gorgeous fall day. We were sitting out on a patio. I was with some of the people I love the most in my life, and the donuts were calling to us. And of course I made the decision, like, I'm eating these donuts. This might be the last time I ever have a chance to eat a donut. Why would I let this message in my head, don't eat sugar? Why would I let that message stop me from right here, right now, enjoying sharing donuts with these people I love on this gorgeous fall day, sitting in the sunshine on this patio with dozens of other people who are also enjoying these amazing donuts? Like, why would I miss that chance? Like, I might die tomorrow. I might never have a chance to eat one of these donuts again. I'm not going to miss it. Now, it doesn't mean that every single day I'll use that as an excuse and go down and buy donuts and eat donuts, because I actually would not feel well if I did that. But it meant that in that moment when I had the choice, I could have said, no, thank you. I won't have a donut with you. I could have made that choice. But having this awareness of the fleetingness of life and the preciousness of every moment helped me to say, it's okay. It's okay to eat some donuts today and to have some sugar. I normally don't eat very much of it. It's okay to eat it today in this moment and share it with the people I love and have an amazing day today. And I'm so grateful that I made that choice. I'm so grateful that I did that. But it's death awareness that helped me decide that yesterday, decide to make the most, to go all in, full-hearted into eating those donuts and sharing them and having an amazing, beautiful day with my family. So that's what the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say that death can serve as an advisor and a teacher. Death helps me have more discernment in the moment about when to say yes and when to say no to certain activities. Just eating a donut alone might not have been enough for me to decide that I wanted the donut, but it was the fact, it was the beauty of the day. It was sharing this time with my loved ones, the great conversation we were having, the connection that we all felt. It was the chance for us to literally share these donuts by cutting them into fourths, and each tasting them at the same time and savoring every bite and licking the icing off our fingers because it was so delicious. It was the richness on many levels of the entire experience of savoring every part of it. That's what my discernment told me. Go for it. This is the right thing right here, right now. Enjoy this, because your chances of having this happen again are not that great. They might be limited. Make the most of it. Enjoy it right now. So that's, again, how I'm explaining to you that death awareness for me has helped me make choices for myself and has helped me really fill my life up with amazing experiences that I cherish and savor, and they're amazing, simple, mundane, day-to-day experiences that I cherish. So I want to talk a little bit about how to grow our awareness of death, recognizing that each one of us is dealing with this reptilian brain that is putting up defenses against being aware of death, that is blocking us from recognizing our own death. So we actually do have to take steps intentionally to think about our own death and to allow this awareness to come through and to break through the barriers that our primitive brain is putting up for us against death. So the first thing, I think we have to be really serious about contemplating death. I think we need a practice that helps us think about and incorporate death into our thoughts, I believe, on a daily basis. I think death should become, as much as possible, a constant companion for us. And I think every day we have to work on that, because once again, we're overcoming the brain's best efforts at blocking us from thinking about death or recognizing our own death. So I think we have to get serious about it and create a practice of death contemplation. You've probably heard me mention before that in the country of Bhutan, I learned people contemplate death 5 times a day. It's part of their spiritual practice, and they spend all of their adult lives preparing for death. So death is just built into their prayers and their meditation and their contemplation practice. They use death as an object of contemplation, and that, again, is their own death, their own personal death, not just death in general, death in nature, death that affects other people, but my own death, my death that is coming, my death that awaits me, that I am practicing for, that I am preparing myself for. So I think each one of us in some way or another needs to create our own practice of contemplating death on a daily basis. For me, one of the ways I do that is to spend time in nature. I often go for nature hikes, or I go snowshoeing in the wintertime. I go for walks on the beach when I'm near the ocean. As much as I can, I get out in nature, if possible, every day in some way or another, because when we're in nature, we're surrounded by the evidence of death. And I find nature as a very supportive and beautiful place to confront the idea of my own mortality, because I'm surrounded by it, and I find it comforting when I see the leaves dying on the trees, when I see dead trees in the forest, when I come across, dead seaweed and animals on the beach. And when I see how natural and how universal and inevitable death is in nature, how it's built into life, I find that comforting, and I find it helps me be more accepting of the natural part death plays in my own life. So nature is very helpful to me as part of my contemplation practice. I also, and it's part of my work, I read a lot of books about death and dying. And so that's very helpful to me as well, because through books I read, through poetry, through videos that I watch, I'm often thinking about death, but I almost always spend some of the time, as I contemplate what I'm learning from this material, I contemplate, what does this say about my death? What can I learn about me and how I'm approaching death and how I'm looking at my death? That's to help me guard against that tendency to always stay in the realm of projection, of denying my death but looking at someone else's death. I constantly come back to, yes, I'm going to die too. Yes, how will it be when I die? And try to encourage myself to stay in the mode of going within, of following the inward arc to work on my own acceptance and awareness of death. So I utilize all of that external information as a way of informing me in my own process of working on death. And so once again, we have to guard against the tendency at all times to think outside of ourselves constantly and to see death as something that exists apart from us, that affects other people. Constantly be bringing all those images and all the thoughts and the awareness, all the beautiful words about death, be bringing them inside and applying them to me. How does this help me think about and feel the reality of my mortality, the reality of my own death? I think it's important in this time we spend in contemplation to remember that it's also natural to experience fear when we think about death. Some of us, I know many people have said to me, I'm not afraid of being dead, but I'm afraid of the dying process. And I think that is perfectly natural and normal. And I think that also comes from our reptilian brains. And I think it's normal to have a fear of suffering and a fear of pain. And because death and the dying process itself are uncertain, we don't know how they're going to look for us. We don't know how it's going to happen. It's normal to have fear. And so I think part of our contemplation has to be upon our fears around death, to also know that we probably are not going to dispel all of our fear. And really, we shouldn't expect to. It's normal to have fear. I think we just need to look at it and embrace it and carry the fear with us, but rise above the fear as much as we can, transcend it when we can with higher thoughts that tell us, but I also know that death is something that every single living thing experiences. And so I will not be alone in that process. It will not just be me experiencing it. I will not be alone. I will be experiencing what every other living thing has gone through. And we need to confront our fear in order to find our own ways of coping with it and living with it, so that our fear, again, doesn't become another force that puts us into denial, that pushes away our own thoughts about our death, that we can embrace the fear and learn to live with our fear and let it be there, but confront it, think about it, write about it, talk about it as much as we can. I mentioned write about it. I have to say, I constantly recommend journaling, but I think writing and journaling about death is very valuable as well. I think that's a great place to record your thoughts and emotions, your fears, your feelings, record new ideas that have come into your head, record new fears that have arisen, write those down. Because I think that's a really helpful way to look at what's happening inside of you. Use a journal, use the written word to help you release those thoughts and feelings, put them on paper. It also becomes a record that you can refer back to and read back and chart your own growth and progress that you're making. So having a regular contemplation practice every day where you spend some kind of time thinking about death, journaling about it, and then also talking about it. And I know, once again, we all of us probably listening to this podcast spend time talking about death because it's part of our work. So we spend time talking to other people about death in general, or talking to other people about their deaths. But it's important to remember that we need to talk about our own death and our own feelings about our death. So I remember this struck me when I was learning about Death Cafe, and that the host or facilitator of a death cafe oftentimes should not share very much, should be there to help everyone else share. But I realize now that perhaps that's a bit of a mistake, because the host, again, is someone who also needs to talk about death from a personal perspective. And so anyway, I would like to encourage each one of us, no matter what we do or where we're working, to take opportunities to talk to other people about our personal feelings about death, what our own fears are, what our own death denial looks like, and where we see it arising, and what obstacles we have to work on to help ourselves contemplate death and think about our own mortality, recognizing we all have those obstacles. They're built into our brain. We will not break them down without working intentionally toward that, toward transcending our own doubts and resistance and denial of death. I think the natural outcome from contemplating death, from thinking about it and working on death on a day-to-day basis, our own acceptance of our death, first of all, is an increased ability to enjoy the present moment. And so when I was saying to you, the reason we need to become more death aware is because of how it changes how we live our lives. So one of the first changes to talk about is just the ability to appreciate the present moment. When I was describing eating those donuts yesterday, that for me was savoring the moment, being right there, fully there, 100%, without doubts and fears about, I'm having sugar, this isn't good for me, without like succumbing to that line of thought, letting myself just fully enjoy and experience and savor the moment of eating those donuts with my family. And so I think it gets easier for us to appreciate the present moment when we recognize I might die overnight. I might not be here tomorrow. There might not be another chance to have these donuts. I think death awareness really helps us significantly to appreciate the present moment even more and to go all in moment to moment and enjoy and savor all these little tiny experiences of life. I think becoming more death aware and contemplating death on a day-to-day basis also helps us enjoy the practice of stillness even more. It helps us get more comfortable with being quiet and being still. I think sometimes one of the reasons that we avoid quiet time and still times are because of this death denial that's happening in our brains all the time. Our brains may be pushing us to stay busy, keep noise all constantly in our presence, stay around other people to avoid stillness, because that's when these uncomfortable thoughts are more likely to rise to the surface. And the more we've dealt with that, the more we've torn down the obstacles to thinking about death and begun to embrace our mortality and appreciate the idea that we're only here for a short time, then the less afraid we are of still times, of quiet, of just sitting in solitude at times. And when we can spend a certain amount of time every day being quiet and still, that creates this calm aura around us, this calmness that other people can literally feel when they're in our presence. The more we practice stillness, the more we develop the calm center within us that radiates out to other people. And it becomes an asset that we can use in our work, whether if we're working with dying patients or with a family that has recently experienced a death, when we can enter their midst with this strong, calm presence emanating from within us, we can help them become calmer. We can help them with their fears and their pain to an even greater extent, because that type of calmness just radiates from us, and it creates a calm center and a calm space in a room wherever we go. So being able to contemplate our own death, overcoming our own resistance and our fears about death, helps us increase our capacity to be calm and quiet and still within. And that's something other people can detect and experience when they're around us. Other people can see that and feel it. They may not know what it is. They may not know what is different about you or why it feels so comfortable to be around you. But when you can emanate that type of calm stillness, you can literally change change the tension and the emotion in an entire room just by walking in and simply bringing in your calmness and creating this space of safety where other people can relax more and calm down their emotions and get in touch with their own inner feelings. So, cultivating the ability to be still and to have a strong, calm center is one of the huge advantages of being more death aware in your own personal life. Another advantage is being able to genuinely experience gratitude for life. A lot of people, a lot of spiritual teachers out there talk about gratitude and just think of 3 things you're grateful for every day and write those down. And it's a fantastic practice. I'm all in favor of it, of building in more gratitude into our day-to-day lives and how we look at life and how we experience the world. But when you have worked on death awareness, and when every day you're aware that this day could be my last day, it becomes much easier to experience deep and authentic gratitude, real, true gratitude, not just something that pops off the top of your head like, oh, I'm grateful for sunshine, but deep gratitude because you literally feel it throughout your entire body. You feel it into your bones that the sunlight is what helps us be here. It's what helps every living thing survive on this planet. That's incredible. I'm so grateful the sun is here today. It's part of my whole existence. And so I'm just trying to say this is so much deeper than just making a list of 3 things and writing down 3 things that you thought of with your mind that you're grateful for. The gratitude literally comes from inside of you. It wells up from inside of you, and you feel it with your entire body, your entire being, because this opportunity to be alive, to be here right now, today, is an immeasurable gift. It is so valuable. And so the gratitude that you can express is so much more profound than what you might have listed in a gratitude journal in the past when you are aware of the precariousness of life, of the preciousness of your very existence, of the fact that this might be it. Today might be all that you have. This might be your last moment. So, this ability to truly and authentically feel gratitude is one of the other benefits of living a death aware life. And I think it becomes part of our contemplative practice of death to incorporate more and more gratitude, to enter into that state of thankfulness and gratitude as much as we can while we're contemplating the fact that life is short and won't last forever. So gratitude itself is one of the ways that we can deepen our contemplative practice around our mortality and the end of life. I also believe that the more we accept mortality and accept that life is short and that we ourselves will die, the less we become attached to material things, material objects. Therefore, the less we consume in our lives and the less we waste and squander things. Even squandering time, squandering our life force itself, squandering our energy, the more likely we are to be good stewards of the gifts we've been given, but also to be less attached to things in the material world. So, and I've seen it happen for myself, having less and less attachment to my possessions and more willingness to let go of them and let them be, because I understand that I won't have these things forever, and they don't really matter as much as the relationships that I'm involved in, the people who are around me. So if I have a material possession that takes a lot of my time and energy, I'm going to seriously look at whether or not it's worth it to me. Is this really something that I want in my life? Because if I have to spend a lot of time maintaining the material object, is that detracting from the time I have to spend with people I love? Is it detracting from other experiences that I could be having in life that mean more to me, that are more valuable to me? And so having death awareness helps me in some ways filter out the things that I care about. It helps me really discover what really does matter to me. Does my couch matter to me? Not very much, only as a useful object for people to sit on. Am I going to spend a huge amount of my time thinking about that couch and taking care of it? Probably not. I'm going to view it as something that's useful and functional, that can contribute. It gives me a place where I can have people come over that I love, and place for them to sit that enhances our ability to be together and share together. That's where the couch has value to me. But apart from those relationships, the couch itself doesn't deserve a huge amount of my time or energy in my mind. This is how I'm thinking about it. It might be different for you, because maybe you have a couch that's an heirloom that you've inherited from a loved one, and that might be hugely significant and important for you in your life. So I don't mean to imply that no couch is worth time or energy. This is just my experience in my life. I think that this death-aware attitude of being less attached to material things is actually a place we need to be in our society today, because we are facing some serious issues here on planet Earth, and many of them come from our tendency to overconsume. We overconsume material items. We buy too much. We hoard too much. We store too much. Too many things that we're not even using. We throw away too much. We squander resources so freely and easily, and the planet is beginning to run out of those resources. And so I think this death-aware attitude of being less attached, of consuming less, of taking less away from the earth for ourselves, because we don't need as much. We don't need as many things to support us when we know that life is short. We'll only be here a short while, so we're going to spend our time with the people we love and our time in nature, and doing things that generate more love and joy on the planet, and less time buying and storing and hoarding and caring for material things. I really do believe this is a mindset that we need to be cultivating right now in our society as much as possible. And I think this is one of the benefits that we could see coming from increased death awareness in our society. But once again, each one of us who wants to teach this lesson or advise other people about how to live a death-aware life, we have to remember that we need to be living it ourselves. We have to survey our own lives and figure out, am I thinking about the fact that I'm mortal and thinking about the fact that I might not be here forever as I make choices for myself, as I make purchases, and as I decide what kind of impact I'm making on the planet? Am I letting death be my advisor and helping me be discerning so that I make the best possible choices for me, for my loved ones, for my community, for the planet? So becoming less attached to the material and less attached also to outcomes, to success and achievement and accomplishment. Those are all things that I attribute, at least, to having increased death awareness in my own life. I think those are benefits that you could attain. I think it's also could be part of your contemplative practice to think about, where do I need to let go more? Where am I attaching to things that don't really matter? Where do I need to recognize that nothing lasts, everything changes, and how can I utilize that practice to help me just let go and stop hanging on and clinging so much to this material and physical aspect of life? Another byproduct, I believe, of death awareness is the ability to be more inclusive and less exclusive. And I talked in a previous episode about death's big tent, the idea that death has enough room in it for all perspectives, for people who come from all points of view, who have different experiences, different beliefs, different practices, and different thoughts about death. For me, myself, being more death aware helps me include more people and more possibilities and more perspectives in my awareness also. And helps me be less judgmental and less excluding of others who disagree with me, who don't see it the same way I do. More likely to create a larger circle under this massive, enormous tent of death that can bring in more and more people and include more and more points of view. My death awareness has helped me do that because as I've become aware of my own mortality and my own impending death, though I have no idea when it will be, but I know that it's coming, I have become aware that every human experiences those same thoughts and has that same reality awaiting them. It is the one universal aspect of all of our lives. It's the one thing that binds me together with every other person on the planet. So being death aware helps me be more inclusive and less exclusive. And one last benefit I wanted to mention from death awareness is the ability to see everything as sacred. And what I mean by that is being able to see every moment of my life as sacred, but also everything in existence around me as sacred, as containing the divine DNA, the same divine DNA that I contain, as being this manifestation of something that's greater than me, something I can't explain, something that's beyond me, but being able to see that everything here, everything in existence, in physical, material existence right now, is part of this sacred act of creation that brought all of this about, that manifested everything present in this physical and material universe, but also to see moments of life as sacred and to have an attitude of awe. And I've talked about awe in the past if you've listened to other episodes, to be able to see that life is something so much greater than my own capacity to understand it, my capacity to explain it and talk about it, including right now on this podcast. It's limited. It's limited by my mind. It's limited by my imagination and my vision. And there's something going on here that's far, far beyond what I'm able to perceive and to even talk about. And there's a feeling of awe when I contemplate that and realize that even my own death and my own mortality is sacred and has an element to it that exceeds my ability to understand it, to understand why I'm mortal, to understand why I was born and why I will die. I can't fully explain that. I can't fully see it. I experience awe when I contemplate it, though, because there's something so vast happening in this universe. And when I look out at the stars at night and realize many of the stars that are visible to me right now, tonight, died thousands, millions of years ago, and the light from those stars is only now reaching us here on planet Earth. That is a mind-blowing, awe-producing experience to contemplate, that this universe is so vast that we are only now experiencing events that occurred in the ancient, distant past. We are only now becoming aware of them. We are only now able to see the light of those stars and to sense something that took place far, far in the past. And so for me, that becomes this experience of awe, of wonderment, of even viewing myself as small in comparison with the vastness of the universe. It helps put things in perspective and put things in their place, so that while I might be tempted to think that when I do die, it's going to be the biggest thing that's ever happened to me, it's a very small thing in contrast to the entire universe. And so I don't need to make more of it than it really is. For me, it will be a huge experience, but it's just part of an enormous, huge, vast universe that is constantly being born and dying before our very eyes. And I'm just participating in all of that. I'm participating in that constant cycle of birth and death. That's amazing. That is wonderful. It's a miracle, and it's awe-inspiring for me. So I can spend my days when the fear begins to arise in me, like, uh-oh, I don't know how I will die. I don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to come about. Is that something to be afraid of? Well, it's something uncertain and unknown. So yes, I have fear about it. But is it part of this huge universal breath of life, of birth and death that's happening around me at all times? Yes, it's a vital, essential, and normal part of the continual evolution and creation of our universe. It's sacred. And so ultimately, I can feel nothing but awe and wonder as I contemplate this mortal existence that I have this opportunity to be part of. And for me, that's an incredible gift. It's amazing. And as I put all of these things together, and just to summarize, I talked about being able to contemplate death on a daily basis, using death as a wise advisor and a teacher, experiencing an increased ability to enjoy the present moment and make the most of each moment that we have, being able to find comfort in stillness and to enhance and strengthen our own calm center within us so that we can use that to bring peace and comfort to other people. Being able to experience deep, authentic gratitude for life, to experience awe, as I just mentioned, for all of life, to become less attached to things and to the outcomes of events and experiences, and to learn how to be good stewards of our time, our energy, and all of our resources to make the most of them in our lifetimes. To become more inclusive and less exclusive, and to see everything as sacred, everything in our lives as sacred, so that we can appreciate all of it and celebrate all of it. Those are the rewards, I believe, of learning to be more death aware and to practice deep death awareness in our lives on a day-to-day basis. I do believe if we practice what we preach, we will be able to help other people confront their own mortality, to overcome their brain's bias against death and their brain's refusal to think about death. We will be able to help them in ways far beyond our previous attempts at teaching people, at leading courses and workshops, if we're simply living these attributes of being death aware. The more we bring them into our own lives, the more we exhibit them and live this death-aware life, the more we're going to help other people transform around us far more easily than we ever imagined before, because we're going to be emanating this joyous radiance, this calm stillness, this vast acceptance and embrace of the cycle of life and death. We will be radiating a peaceful, comfortable willingness to be mortal, and showing other people through our actions and our words and the way we live moment to moment that it's okay that we're mortal, and it's okay to contemplate our death. And it's okay to let death become our advisor and to teach us how to live our best lives and be our highest selves. And that is my message. And that is something that I hope is a powerful truth for you. And I hope this serves as a good reminder to you to keep working on your own death awareness and death acceptance so you can be a living, breathing example of embracing and accepting your own personal mortality. I hope you enjoyed this replay of my solo episode, How to Live a Death Aware Life, and that you find it valuable to you. I wanted to mention again that my book, The Tao of Death, again, which is an adaptation of the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, an ancient Chinese philosopher. That book is available on Amazon, but you can also go to my website, eoluniversity.com/Tao of Death, and Tao is spelled Tao, Tao of Death. And I'll also leave a link to it in the show notes if you'd like to go there to see how you can purchase the book. And on that same page, you can download the free companion journal that goes with the book that will allow you to read one verse a day and write about it in your journal and do some contemplation every day if you're interested in doing some death awareness work. So again, that's the Tao of Death. So thanks once again for joining me today and tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you happen to listen, or to the YouTube channel, End of Life University. I'm very grateful for any subscribers I get. And also know that you can support the podcast and the YouTube channel by going to eoluniversity.com/support. And there you'll find 3 different ways you can make a small financial contribution to help keep this podcast and the YouTube channel on the air. So thanks again. And until we're together next week, remember, we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever life brings your way, and love each and every moment of this very fleeting and precious life. Bye-bye.